Hello and welcome to Face Off here on France 24. Islam, once again, it is on the agenda. This Monday, the French government convened a new umbrella group of Muslim representatives in order to address the daily lives of the 5 million Muslims in France and also the ever-touchy issue of radical Islam. With me to discuss the issue, Jean-Marc Gonin with the Figaro magazine and Philippe Turl from Radio France Internationale. So a new instance of dialogue, as it's called, will officially start, and it's not replacing the existing French Council of the Muslim Faith, which has been roundly criticized for its paralysis and lack of representativity. Clearly, the Interior Minister was there yesterday to explain what the motives were for this new instance of dialogue. Let's take a listen to Bernard Cazeneuve.
Today, there must be a dialogue with French Muslims about the training of chaplains, about the funding of mosques and transparency of operations, about ritual slaughter. We already have an established dialogue with the Catholic Church, and we will do the same with Islam. It will deal with very concrete issues, with one principle, the principle of respect. Respect for Republican values in a calm, straightforward manner. Calm because one needn't lose one's cool to be Republican.
This is an important move by the government because the issue of the Islam in France, the Islam of France, has been there for years, clearly after the terrorist attacks in Paris and the fact that we see a lot of people leaving France to fight in Syria or in other places is making the issue even more pressing. And the authorities don't really know how to handle this, so now there's this new attempt.
Yes, because what has existed previously that has been put in place, especially by Nicolas Sarkozy when he was Interior Minister years ago, is obviously not sufficient to have a dialogue with Muslim religious people in France. So obviously there are two main problems addressed by the Minister of the Interior. First, the chaplains in the jails, in the prisons, because it has been proven by all reports that radicalism is enhanced, is growing in the jails themselves. You have people who enroll new members in radical Islam when they are in jail. That's one of the problems. So you need to train chaplains who have to be strictly controlled by the state, by government, those people who enter jails every day. And the second is the building of mosques. There is a big problem in France through the secularist system. You can't use public money to build new places of cult. But on the other hand, Islam is a religion of rather poor people, lower class people, and there's not enough money to build new mosques, so you have to have a dialogue about who pays for the mosque and to prevent radical groups or radical states to be behind the building of a new mosque in this country.
Right. There was a very careful effort by the French authorities to say, okay, we're not going to point the fingers at Muslims, we're not going to talk about radical Islam, so we'll talk about daily issues, the issues of mosque, of the training of chaplains, really bread and butter issues. But clearly, the fact that radicalism is there is very present, even though it's not acknowledged.
Well, there's a big problem in France because I think there's misunderstanding on both sides about what the other side actually thinks. And French people are insecure about Islam. They feel that their values are being taken away from them.
All the polls show that.
Polls show that. They feel that they don't have the right to do certain things that they used to do. Just for one example being the availability of pork, for example, in schools, in canteens, and in some cases it's being withdrawn because there have been complaints from Islamic groups that they don't want it. So that there is this, I think, misunderstanding on the part of non-Muslim French people. And then on the side of the Muslims in France, there's this other worry that they're being pinpointed or pointed out or vindicated or blamed for being behind the attacks at Charlie Hebdo in January, which of course they're not. The fact that they're behind radical Islamic thought, which of course they're not either. People don't understand exactly what Islam is, and everything is mixed up together. So there needs to be more clarity, I think, in explaining to both sides exactly where they should stand and what the feeling should be. And I think that's something the government's got to work towards, because there's been this massive increase in the amount of Muslims in France over the last 30 years, really since the 1970s. There are now 5 million of them, and there are quite a lot of them in the same areas, like in the Paris region in the south of France, near Marseille, in certain parts of northern France, which means that there are large concentrations of Muslim families, and French people there don't understand. And this, because of the situation that we hear about in the news all the time about Islamic State, because of the Charlie Hebdo attacks that we saw in January in France, there's been a big increase in the amount of anti-Muslim attacks in France, and so far in 2015 there have been as many attacks already until the month of June than there were in the whole of 2014.
Clearly, there is also some criticism of the existing body that was created over a decade ago, the French Council of the Muslim Faith, including within the Muslim community. Let's take a listen to the spokesperson of another organization, the Council of the Imams of France. Let's take a listen.
It has to be said, the French Muslim Council is an authority which was badly structured by Mr. Sarkozy when he was Interior Minister. It was a botched job, and now Islam is farmed out. In addition, this authority has no legitimacy among Muslim communities in France.
The state in France traditionally wants an official person to talk to. It does so with the Catholic Church, with the Jews, and it has been trying to do so with the Muslims, but clearly, and this criticism is not isolated, it's widely shared, it hasn't been working. So why will it work this time?
Well, they are trying to find a new system of representativity. It's extremely difficult to organize this community for different reasons. The system that has been chosen is based on the mosques, but the mosques are mainly under influence of the state of origin of the worshippers. So it's you have a fight between Algeria and Morocco to represent the French Muslims, which is a paradox. And what this gentleman was saying is that this criteria of representativity are not the right ones to represent the Muslims. Look at the president. The president of the council you were mentioning is a functionary of the Algerian state. So there is a contradiction per se within the system. And Cazeneuve, the interior minister, is trying to find a new way to represent French Muslims. And this, the final aim of that process is to try to isolate radicalism within the community of French Muslims. And for the moment, the definition through the mosque is not sufficient.
Right. So the idea of the government is to broaden this. They say we don't want to finish off this existing council, but we want to broaden to have more representativity. Is it a pie in the sky, or are there reasons to believe it will work to a certain degree? Maybe not to eliminate radical Islam, but at least to address the challenges of Muslims in daily life.
I think that it's a step forward. It's not an easy problem to solve in France. There's something else as well, which contributes to that. Is if you look at the state of imams in French mosques, a lot of them don't have any religious training. They don't speak French, a lot of them. There's no control over what they're talking about. All of that needs to be sorted out by the French state.
We've heard that before. We need to train the imams and so on, but
they
it
haven't been able to
happening.
do that. And as Jean-Marc was saying earlier on about the chaplains, there's the same situation that there are chaplains who are not paid enough. There are not enough of them. There should be more of them in prison to stop this radical thought from spreading within French prisons, which is one of the grounds where it is the most rife. The state needs to invest more money, but they're up against another problem, which is when they want to build a mosque in France, there are like 300 mosques which are planned. they run into opposition from local authorities, from the local right wing, from representatives of the National Front, and the construction of these mosques is delayed, and that pushes people to go and worship in places which aren't under any control, which can also lead to the spread of radical thought. So it is a big problem in France that is not an easy one to solve. And I think going back to what you were saying is trying to find a person to whom you can talk to who will represent everybody is going to be very, very, very difficult.
And getting back to the training of imams, we have another difficulty of the French type of secularism. The French state cannot fund at university theology lessons. It is forbidden by law. So we don't.
This needs to change, you think? There needs to be flexibility.
Well, they have the only place where you can have this is in eastern France, because they have a special status dating back from Bismarck time and the Prussia when it belonged to Prussia. So you can train imams with public funds in Strasbourg, for instance. But most of the universities in France do not teach theology. So once again, you have a difficulty with the French belief in secularism that clashes with the needs today to englobe Islam in the French Republic.
And I think also we need more, the Muslim groups themselves in France need to be more vociferous about what they want and to stand up for themselves and tell the French state this is how we need to manage the situation. Don't really hear very much from them.
Okay. Obviously, this is going to be a debate for a long time here in France. Thank you very much to both of you, and thank you for watching this edition of Face Off here on France 24.